ourselves and towards us the uncomfortable truths that are our history here. And may this inspire us to not let anyone else be sacrificed in the way Duma and the Sharpeville Six have been sacrificed for our behalves. I do want to just note we have obviously started a little bit later than planned, so we are going to shorten our tea break just a little bit, but as each facilitator comes up, we will just set a little reminder. We do so on the program have a space. We will be doing a screening towards the end during the refreshment section, so we are changing that. We will be going to the back, getting a few refreshments, and then being seated to watch the film. Please also do note that if you are needing to move out towards the restrooms, it's down the hall and to the right. I am now going to do the honors of handing us over to Dr. Joji Mrwebi, who is our School of Social Sciences Deputy Director and who also holds the profile of community engagement for our school.
No relations, nothing. Thank you so much, Program Director. This is too formal. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Fine.
Hey, it's cold.
Yes.
It's a bit cold. It's a bit cold. Yeah? No. Maybe I drove from Cape Town, so hey, it's cold. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Are you well?
Yes.
I'm good. Thank you for asking. In the spirit of Ubuntu, can you please greet the person on your left hand side? And then in the same spirit, greet the person on your right hand side. Greet the person behind you. And then I want you to greet the person very far from you and greet in your native language. Someone who's very far from that side to that side to the front. Molweni! Tobela! Ladies and gentlemen, I need to welcome you. So I am the Malumi of the School of Social Sciences, and in every African cultural ceremony, the Malumi plays an important role of welcoming everyone. So I have noticed as a social scientist that the Malumi, or the uncle, always emphasizes something in welcoming people. He says the dogs have been so please be at ease. The dogs that guard the campus have been no change. Yeah, we chained them here, so there's no dog that's going to bite you. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My formal greetings to the Vice Chancellor of the Northwest University, Professor Bismarck Tioben, who is Tobieka, who is not here. The Deputy Vice Chancellor of the Northwest University, the Vanderbilt Park campus, Professor Mpahlelen, the campus chief director, Mayor Andy Swamsi, who I was with last night at the alumni. Formal greetings to her. Formal greetings to the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Joji Mrwebi, the Deputy Dean of Community Engagement, whose efforts have culminated in this day, Professor Herculine Kotia, Director of the School of Social Sciences, Prof. Mayor Mohadi Molobe, and the subject chair of History, Ms. Basitsana Tsuwane, and the subject chair, all in all, Dr. Shebeni Mudisani, the Deputy Subject Chair of Anthropology, Roxanne Matobi, and then the Deputy Subject Chair of Sociology, Prof. Verena Nau. Colleagues, today is a very special day for us. And so I want to say firstly thank you to the chairperson of the organizing committee, Meba Sisana Tsuwani, and her team of Imbogodo, Roxanne Matobi, and Gelebugile Ngani. Colleagues, good morning. Your resilience and dedication towards the narration of history and commemoration of our heroes and heroines is worthwhile in the determination towards the realization of total histories. To our esteemed guests, the Duma family and the Sharpeville Six, whose sacrifices and determination for a just and democratic society have culminated in the need for a robust, deliberation on the history of the region and more so on the township of Shavas. Re a le amohela, Payi Duma, re re thobela. I have also noticed with admiration school uniform. And for a second I thought, are we commemorating June 16? I almost ran back to go and collect my uniform. It doesn't fit quite well, but I almost ran back. So I had to remember, June 16 is only next month. I look at you, Banabas Polo, with great admiration. I look at you with great enthusiasm because your presence here says a lot. It says to us that you value your history because we can't really plan a future without knowing our history. And because you are here, you are going to resound, you are going to speak about what happened today to your fellow learners and to your teachers. So you carry this history. So please, be free, enjoy yourselves. You must ask difficult questions because this is your future that we are talking about today. So colleagues, I grew up in a village called Ramashashai in the northern province of our country, Limpopo. And in our village, there were a lot of stray dogs. Now I'm thinking about the example that I gave earlier, that we have changed the dogs, quote unquote. There were a lot of stray dogs, and our stray dogs knew a simple language. The language was very simple. Whenever you saw a stray dog, this is based on a true story, and there's a lot of swear words in the next segment. So please close your ears. Parental advice. So there's a lot of stray dogs in Ramashashai, and the only way we communicated with these stray dogs was by using one word. So if we were at a funeral and at a wedding and they just came wanting to eat, the simple thing you would say, "Futter!" And then the stray dog ran away, right? It knew that language. But now when I moved to Captain Park in a suburb called Bejakers, I would commute to school using one road going, one road coming back. So there was a certain house, number 35 Bulbul, and it had a nice dog there. I can't remember the breed because for me a dog is a dog. All dogs are dogs. So every time I passed that house, it would bark at me. And I'd be like, Fosek. Every day coming back, Fosek. But this peculiar day, and I knew that something would happen. I had sensed it within that something's going to happen today. So as I walked past number 35 Bulbul, the owner had just driven into the house and left the gate open. I did not notice. So the dog came towards me and I was like, Fosek! And then it just never listened to me. And I could see that this thing's gonna bite me. But the owner just shouted, "Byron, stop it, come back!" And it immediately stopped and went back to him. And I thought to myself, what does that mean? The dog had voice recognition, right? Mm-hmm. And it just didn't recognize my voice. It didn't know my voice. But what does that mean in today's context and in today's event? People from different backgrounds tell their histories, and often we don't listen to them when they speak because we don't have the voice recognition. Did you catch that? Mm-hmm. Because often our own prejudice, our own privileges stop us from listening to people's histories. And when we do listen to people's histories, and we give ourselves time to listen to people's histories, we learn about their scars. Whether it be emotional scars, whether it be physical scars, we have an opportunity to listen and to learn. So the point that I'm making, ladies and gentlemen, is let's give ourselves a moment to remove all mental barriers, all emotional barriers, all physical barriers, our prejudices, our preconceived notions, let's take a second and just brush them away and switch on our voice recognition mechanisms. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, here at the Northwest University, we believe in fundamental rights. We believe in the right to education. Everyone has the right to education, not just any education, but a decolonized education, an Africanized education, an education that embraces the history of every single community. And today I stand in front of you with great joy and great happiness because this is the very, very first time that we have this conversation on this very campus. And so I am proud. Last month we had a conversation, we had a human rights dialogue on the Sharpeville massacre. And today we have another conversation on the Sharpeville 6. I am so happy that our history is not just in our communities, but our history is making its way practically into the institution. So I stand in front of you as a proud director and as a Malumi, just to say the dogs have been chained. Enjoy yourselves, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is gallows. I'm also part of the organizing team for this event today. Thank you, Malumi Tumishan, our director of the School of Social Sciences. I am part of the School of Social Sciences as well. I am an anthropologist in the department. At this moment, we will be taking a moment to remember Joji Khumalo. I'm going to call on a family representative, Mom Beauty Nkela. We will also be lighting a candle. We are waiting for an esteemed guest, Dr. Marjorie Jobson, so that we can light a candle and hold a moment of silence in remembrance of Duma Khumalo. At this moment, while we still wait for Marjorie, I would like to call on Mama Beauty Nkela to recognize this moment.
Sanibonani, ninjani? Ngikhuluma noMama Beauty Nkela from the KZN. Ngiyajabula ukuthola ithuba ngisi la. Ubaba Duma sasinaye emanzi Mtoti. Sisebenza nokhulumani. Ngiyajabula futhi ukuthi ngibone nomndeni wakhe. Ngizocela nje ukuthi sithole ithuba noma nje minute sithule simkhumbule njengoba simlethele ibani. Siyathemba nabanye abakhona hamba nabo kuzokhanya kubona. Mina ngisobe i-organization yabafelokazi ama-untouchables e-KZN. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you so much, Mama. You can have this. Next, I would like to call upon the son of the late Duma Khumalo, Joji Khumalo, who will be reading the biography of Duma Khumalo. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Joji. I I'm here on behalf of the family. So, not entirely the biography, but I'll talk a bit about him based on my memory. Program director, distinguished guests, family members, representatives of civil society, fellow young people, especially the learners. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
It is both an honor and a deeply emotional responsibility to stand before you this morning, because today we gather not only to remember a man, but to honor a voice that refused to be silenced by prison walls, by the gallows, or by the cruelty of apartheid. A voice that carried the memories of those who never made it home. Whenever my dad spoke in public about his life and experiences on death row, he would always say that his purpose in life was to speak for those who were executed. He wanted to share their stories with the world. As a child, I would sit and listen to him speak about many young men, often younger than my current age, and I would be amazed by their bravery. We speak about people like Zondo and like Payi, young men who walked toward the gallows with courage that many of us cannot even begin to imagine today. Payi's story remained especially close to my father's heart. At the time of his execution, Payi was 16 years old. You can imagine what a 16-year-old thinks about. For me, I think at 16, I'm not sure what I was writing about, but I never thought about fighting any struggle or being a native victim of some sort. So at 16, it's an age when many young people today are still sitting in classrooms, dreaming about the future, still trying to discover who they are. But beyond politics and prison, I introduced my father to the works of Peter Payi. So in the darkness of death row, literature became another form of survival. Through books, storytelling, and ideas, they protected their humanity in a system designed to strip it away. He survived death row, but survival for him was never simply about living. It was about carrying memory. It was about ensuring that South Africa would never forget the cost of freedom. When apartheid ended, many expected survivors like my father to simply move on, but he understood that healing without truth is impossible, and reconciliation without justice is incomplete. Through his work with the Khumalo support group, he stood alongside victims and survivors of apartheid violence, who continued to carry trauma long after democracy arrived. Khumalo became a space where victims could speak, mourn, remember, and demand dignity. For my father, the struggle did not end in 1994. The struggle continued in families who had lost breadwinners, in communities broken by violence, and in survivors still carrying invisible scars. He also spoke openly about the shortcomings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Whilst he believed truth-telling was necessary, he also believed that truth alone was not enough. He questioned whether reconciliation could truly exist without meaningful reparations and accountability. Too many victims told their stories publicly, relieved their pain before the nation, and yet continued to live in poverty afterwards. Too many families were expected to forgive whilst carrying the economic consequences of apartheid. My father understood something very important. Justice is not only emotional, it is also material. Reparations are never meant to be charity. They were meant to be recognition that people had lost parents, livelihoods, education opportunities, and entire futures because of apartheid. One of the most powerful things about my father was the way he chose to tell those stories. He did not only speak in courtrooms, lecture halls, or political meetings. He used theatre and the arts as a concept of memory and healing. Through productions like The Story I'm About to Tell, He Left Quietly, and Facing Death, Facing Life, he transformed pain into testimony. He stood on stages and relived some of the most painful moments of his life, so that many South Africans, especially as the young people, could understand what apartheid truly did to human beings. He understood that art has power. Power to educate, power to heal, power to confront uncomfortable truths, and power to humanize history. Because sometimes statistics do not make people's stories speak. Through theatre, he made South Africa that behind every political slogan was a human life, Behind every execution was a mother who cried. Behind every prison number was a dream interrupted. This morning, as we honor my father, we must also honor the many young people whose lives were stolen by apartheid. For example, Solomon Mahlangu was only 23 years old when he was executed on the 6th of April 1979. And Ruzondo was only 19 years old when he was executed on the 9th of September 1986. Lucky Payi was only 16 years old when he was executed on the 19th of September 1986. Benjamin Mrwebi, a poet and activist, was also executed on 18th of October 1985. These are not old men at the end of their lives. They were young people with dreams, talents, fears, and futures that apartheid denied them. And perhaps that is why their stories matter so much today. Because South Africa once again stands as at a crossroads, especially when it comes to the future of black youth. Today's young people may not face past laws or political executions, but they face other forms of violence every single day. The youth of today faces unemployment, poverty, crime and gangsterism, substance abuse. They face corruption that steals opportunities from the poor. We also face inequality that continues to trap millions in survival mode. Too many young people feel disconnected from the liberation story because freedom has not yet translated into dignity in their lives. My father believed deeply in the power of ordinary people. He believed memory itself as a form of resistance, and perhaps the greatest tribute we can pay to him and to all those who never returned from the gallows is to ensure that freedom becomes meaningful in the lives of ordinary South Africans. Not just political freedom, but economic dignity, educational opportunities, safe communities, and hope for young people. As we honor Duma Khumalo this morning, may we also honor his mission to speak for those who could no longer speak for themselves. May we never forget the names of those who died. May we never become numb to injustice, and may we continue the unfinished work of building a South Africa worthy of their sacrifice. I thank you.
Very much.
Thank you so much, Joji, for helping us remember your father in such an honorable way. At this moment, I would like to call upon the grandchildren of Duma Khumalo as we observe a moment of silence for 10 seconds. Complete silence, please, and then we will continue with our program. Thank you. Thank you. May we continue to observe these moments of silence in remembrance of all our struggle heroes for the freedoms that we get to enjoy today. At this moment, I would like to call upon Basitsana, who will be facilitating the next session as we enter into the keynote for what brings us here today. Basitsana Joanna. All right. I will continue with the program. Well, I'm obviously not Basizana, so I will continue with the program. Basi is handling many things. She's wearing many hats for today. So I will continue as the facilitator for this session as well. We're entering into our keynote for this memorial lecture. I will call upon Dr. Marjorie Jobson, who is the director at Kuluma Support Group. This is a scholarly lecture that follows the life of Duma Khumalo. Dr. Marjorie Jobson is the national director of Kuluma Support Group, a community-based membership organization of victims and survivors of serious human rights violations. Kuluma facilitates processes of dealing with and integrating trauma to promote survivor capabilities of self-resilience and social and economic inclusion, access to justice, and restoration of human dignity. Kulumani is a founding member of the global movement of the International Network of Victims and Survivors. Marjorie is a medical graduate with a specialization in a very big word that I cannot pronounce, anesthesiology, right? She helped establish the Institute of Women and Gender Studies at the University of Pretoria, where she served as a research and training associate for several years. She was also appointed as the Commissioner of the Human Rights, Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities in 2004 and served in various committees in the institution. All right, am I missing something? She also survives by her 3 adult children and 2 grandchildren. That's something very sweet to add to her biography. Along with her many accomplishments, it's a very nice way to humanize her. She is an important member of the academic community and a historical figure as well. Marjorie,
No, she won't have
So, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I am so impressed with this campus. It's my first visit. Things are happening. We've had extraordinary assistance from some of your academics and students put together and taken care of all the logistics. So it's been a very nice, smooth thing for us to be part of, and we're very grateful. So I thought I should start with where the story begins, with Duma and Kulumani. I was the chairperson of the Pretoria Black Sash, actually years ago, as you can imagine, because Black Sash has celebrated 70 years since it was founded. And what we used to do as Black Sash was we would decide, we had 9 offices around the country. Each area of the country has different particular problems related to apartheid. And so we were given the task of stopping the hangings, and that's how my connection with Duma started. So we had been infiltrated by the State Security Council. Most of our members had decided it was too scary to be part of Black Satch anymore, but we had a group of 5 women. I was one of them, and we made friends with the lawyer who argued for the Uppington 14, and she was incredibly disappointed because they were given the death sentence, like Duma was given the death sentence. And but what she could do is she had, her clients were on death row, so she could give her clients our names so that we could get a right to visit. We were 5 people because we knew somebody had to go every day of the week to find out who had been given the notice that they were to be executed the following week. That was how they worked. And so the person I visited was from Uppington, and his name is Albert Tawili. He's recently passed away. But the friendships that were made on death row, Albert, every Tuesday, I did my night duty at California every Monday night. And when I go home, I have to pass the prison, so I would go and see the person I was allowed to visit. The thing that hurt me so much is that when you present yourself at death row, you see the logbook, and it says all the people that they've hanged, in the last few weeks, and it says terechtgestel, which is basically, I'm sure you probably know, it means they've been dealt with, which means they were hanged. And so what we knew was that if we could meet people on death row, they could tell us who had got those notices of execution. And then we had a full-time lawyer who apparently was also assassinated, Sheikh Sefanyetso, and Sheikh's had the right as an attorney to pull the court records, and he got incredibly skillful at scanning through the court records and finding the arguments that managed to get the stays of execution awarded. We won so many stays of execution that FW de Klerk decided there's clearly something very wrong with this death penalty and created a moratorium. And from there, everybody on death row got a life sentence, and then other people, and some of the people at that point were just put out on the street, like the Uppington 14. They were told, no, you can just go away now. Well, Uppington's the other end of the country, and they had to find a way to get home with no support, So, so that's how we started to get inside information to try and work with the law to stop the hangings, because the stays of execution were clearly so unjust. We had people that were called the hanging judges who very readily gave death sentences. And so I went back to my medical work. I was working at California then, and also at Steve Biko, as it is now. And I got a call one day from Duma. Duma was one of those category of people. His death sentence was commuted to life, and he was eventually released. And Duma calls me and he says, Marge, your job is not finished. You've got to come and help us. We've started Khulumani Support Group. And that was in 1997. They needed a board because they had people had been working as volunteers for about 5 years. And eventually we got the notice of Amnesty International in the Netherlands, and they said, we'd like to support your work, but you will have to have a board. Father Patrick in front, and myself, and Kloki Mofokeng at the back, we were all part of the first board of Khulumani Support Group. And so Duma then gives me this job, we've got to stop the hangings, and he's inside, and he's called me to say, we've got to stop the hangings. And so we had one backslash member going to the prison every weekday, okay? And so at the end of each week you had information from 5 people. That gallows museum will show you that they could actually hang 3 sets of 7 people when they wanted to deal with a lot of people at a time. Imagine 21 hangings a day. I think it's appalling. And so because of the work that Sheikh Sefaneso, F.W. de Klerk, and we always felt this guy is quite a fair man, he stopped the hangings and to do an investigation into an alternative. But by that time, many things had happened on death row, because once we were visiting, we finally got the right to bring people radios, and then we won the right for them to have 30 minutes of soccer a day, and it continued. We realized something's shifting here. You still had to go on the day of the week you were allocated, but I think having people come like that also inspired them to start advocating for themselves in a way. And so we could see something shifting. And eventually, of course, Duma was out. All the people were either in life sentences or they were put out on the street. And so the lawyers decided now is the time to apply for the death penalty to be declared unlawful, illegal, and invalid. You know how the Constitutional Court is it. And Wim Tremgrove took our case and argued it magnificently, and that's how the death penalty was abolished, through the arguments at the Constitutional Court. Something that I would like all young people to know, because there are ways that you can bring issues to the Constitutional Court, and there are lawyers willing to help you with it. So then I was just happily being a doctor until Duma's call one day. And it began a most amazing journey from 1997 still to today with Kulumani. Kulumani is 30 years old this year. And we have grown in so many interesting ways, because, you know, Kulumani stood for justice for victims, for healing, for reparation, and for building people's economic self-reliance, you know, which was for us very important, because when people come from very marginalized places, you can deal with the trauma, but if they have not gained a means to earn an income, and not become economically active, they relapse. And so that was one of our biggest challenges, was creating programs where people could prove that all the things that they could do. One of the things that was a disadvantage, though, was that the state said for all these jobs, especially if they were with the state, you had to have a matric certificate. And of course, most of that generation had been so active in the struggle, they'd never had time to study. So that was a big disadvantage, and that's why we started creating our own programs and having our members trained. We used a very interesting process called Training for Transformation, a wonderful program. I discovered it because my husband got a scholarship to Minnesota, and when we got there, the Center for Reflective Leadership, they said, but what are you doing here? Because don't you know the best training for transformation program in the whole world is in South Africa? I mean, we didn't know that. And so when I came back after that, we were there a year, we dealt with a lot of terrible things, because the racism was so much more visible in the United States, even in a state like Minnesota, which was reputed to have the best social policies in the whole of the United States. But every day, our black colleagues, we were 14 scholars in a group, the majority were black from all over the continent, and every single day they dealt with what people call, I think it's more than microaggressions due to racism. So we had brilliant people. We had the Minister of Finance of Niger, and we had the head of the Democratic Party, and the legal desk in Senegal. People like that, exquisite, absolutely extraordinary people. But they would sit in the class, because you could they called it auditing a course. You choose what you would want to put together as the subjects you follow. And whenever one of our black colleagues put up their hand was like invisible to the teachers. I mean, that was I think it still pretty much hasn't changed. What happened then was that one of the things, none of our fellows had ever become computer literate. Okay? Meanwhile, in the United States, from the first grade, people are using computers. So one of the compulsory courses was you had to do a computer literacy course, and teaching it had never taught people who had never ever seen a keyboard, you know. They came from all these parts of Africa, and he just one day threw in the towel and he said, "But I can't teach you guys, I'm going." So my husband stayed up and he said, "Well, I'm going to take over." And by the end of the year, everybody was computer literate, which was so wonderful. So we could start, emails had just begun coming to South Africa, and we could start keeping in touch with these wonderful human beings across our continent. When I came back to Kulumani, and our work continued, but got more and more interesting and more exciting. And because it was developing so in such interesting ways, we didn't realize that we had become a target of national intelligence. And we were infiltrated by national intelligence, and a whole lot of things happened. This is post-94. You still have to deal with what they call counter-revolutionaries. The things that are changing people's lives are seen as counter-revolutionaries. And so these were all former combatants who then decided they were not happy with Kulumani. And so they hijacked our office, and in our office we had built a database of 120,000 records of victims of apartheid crimes in South Africa. And we felt it was our most valuable asset. And then we got an order from the former TRC Commissioner for Victims, who said, "You are going to hand over your database to us." And we said, "But it's all our work over years. What role are we going to play?" And she said, "There's no role for Kulumani. We are now taking over everything." Okay? And we said, "Well, it doesn't work like that." And I said, "I have no mandate without the approval of the membership of Kulumani to do that." We retained our whole database. We had trained many young people, because you often to get other jobs you have to have in-service training and you have to do internships. We noticed that Ekurhuleni Metro had a database of young people and their qualifications, and they agreed to partner us so that we could hire 5 young people every year who got paid by Ekurhuleni, and they became very skilled on our database. Almost all of them are now working in big computer companies, so we're very proud about that. And so the database we realized we thought it was a very precious asset. We thought the whole nation needs to know the people who sacrificed and suffered for democracy, but it was something our government didn't want, and they still don't want it. We faced the attacks because there's been a big attempt to sanitize the records, and we have a very inconvenient record of 120,000 victims of apartheid human rights violations. We didn't know we got into their very bad books. But we are still standing, and we are still coming through, and I thought I should tell you where things have got to, because we have never stopped advocacy and practical programs and support. People still call our office every weekday. This week I had pensioners from all these pension funds that people have never been paid out. You probably have read about it. So all the 220 Transnet workers, all the black workers have never been paid out their pensions. And we thought, like, how do people come to Kulabali? But we have done a lot of that kind of work, so it's very exciting for them to still remember Kulabali could probably help us. Our focus has always been on changing the lives of the people who have suffered the most, who have given the most, who are resilient and have kept going despite everything that happens to them. I used to be on the land access movement of South Africa, and what we noticed was that we hung on to this lobbying for people to get their land back from which they were dispossessed. But it was such a long struggle that nearly all the people that we've been working with decided to come to the cities to see if they couldn't make a better living in the cities. When we checked, we found nearly all the people from land access movement were now in informal settlements around the cities. So I thought I should maybe tell you what's actually very current for us. You may not know that there has been a commission of inquiry that Ramaphosa was told by the court to set up. It is called the TRC inquiry, and it was set up mainly because the 350 cases that the Amnesty Committee had said is enough evidence to prosecute these people for the crime of apartheid. None of the cases were taken to court. So what was going on? And so they took a case to court to say we need an investigation. We need to know the truth about why all of these cases have never made any progress. We went and registered with the TRC inquiry because everything became only about prosecutions. Meanwhile, we knew that the biggest injustice was all the people who showed up every day to protest against apartheid, to protect their communities. You know, all the ways we heard about what they were doing were losing out. There was nothing for them. It was only lots of money for prosecutions. And so this commission has a very interesting chairperson, Justice Sisi Kampepe. I think she's one of the bravest women I know, because she decided mostly all the problems are created by the politicians. So in the beginning, she had to give the politicians a chance to talk first, and then they were told, okay, you've had your chance, now it's for the people to talk. And she's remarkable, but the politicians were are very afraid of Sisi Kampepe because she's straight and fair, you know, everything that you want in a constitutional court judge. And so they started bringing applications to have her removed, to demand that she recuse herself. And she said, I'm not going anywhere. She stood up to all these politicians. I am not going anywhere, I'm here to do my job. And now they've got invested in another series of attempts to remove her because she has so much respect, because she fights for the ordinary person and all the things that they face. And so I then was sent by people working at the commission to have a conversation with the they call her the secretary of the TRC inquiry. She's an advocate. She's another very brave woman. I don't know how this commission ended up with so many brave people. And I spent 2 hours with her, and she said, you are going to have to bring all of this information to the inquiry, because the inquiry was only dealing with lawyers and actually fighting for the money that was going to be paid out as constitutional damages. And so that's where we are. We're on a group of lawyers came forward. Kurumani has never had money to hire lawyers, but this group of lawyers said, we want to help you now, and we're making huge progress We've got affidavits from Kulumani members who were involved in very brutal things that happened to them. And I'm testifying, and now they've asked us to find experts on reparation. And the reason reparation is so much on people's mind is because the African Union last year declared a decade of action for reparatory justice for victims in Africa, for all victims of African descent. And we have a brilliant regional director of the UN Office of the High Commission for Human Rights. Her name is Abigail Norco. She's done an immense amount of work with the Sharpeville survivors. And Abigail started organizing gatherings in that office to meet the people who are in other parts of Africa are also fighting the battle for reparation. And we've built a wonderful network across Africa. They are all lawyers and judges. They formed a group called African Jurists and Judges Forum. And now we have legal representation coming to support our case at our TRC inquiry from the African Judges and Jurists Forum, which is amazing for us. We haven't had money to hire lawyers at all, and now we just have all these wonderful things happening. 5 minutes, okay, I'm nearly done. So I just wanted to alert you how exciting it's becoming. The lawyers have produced all the founding arguments for the case about the failure to honor reparation. Their finding is very interesting. They said the Truth and Reconciliation Commission had all the power to demand the payment of reparation. So there is a fund for reparation. It has 2.1 billion rand in it, and Kulumani has had to stand up over and over and over again when we get word from people inside the Department of Justice. Luckily there are, what do you call them, whistleblowers inside, and they say they've made their plans, they're about to steal all that money, which is not designated for them. They're all employed in high-ranking positions. And so we've managed to defeat them because people come together to support the right things. The case, we are waiting to hear when it will be on. I'm sure it's going to be broadcast, live streamed. Because South Africa got a reputation of having one of the very best truth and reconciliation commissions ever. After 21 previous commissions, this was the best, and they thought it was one very, very good work. But they have never fulfilled all the promises made, which are basically about restoring the dignity and the lives of the victims. And this is, I was thinking, the link to Duma. We often say we feel like Duma is protecting us because everything that could go wrong, people come forward to help us, So we have a real sense that we have this protection of our ancestors in Kulumani. And I hope you will follow when we actually get into the Commission of Inquiry, because I think it's a very important case. Especially that now that the African Union has declared the right of people of African descent for reparatory justice. I much prefer the word reparatory justice because it's a justice that can help in so many different ways to repair the harm done to people. And we've created all the programs. We decided when we have to fight this long battle, we must keep people busy and active and learning new skills all along. So we have a very strong membership. When they call us to different parts, we arrive, we think we're going to have 100 people attending, and then we get there and we find 2,300 people have turned up. This was our last meeting in Mpumalanga. We said, how on earth? But what the activists in Mpumalanga had done had been, they went to every town in Mpumalanga and they set up a Kulumani committee, and these were all the committees from Mpumalanga who showed up. at the venue. It's just so inspiring because it's continued the practices of people in the struggle demanding truth and justice have not stopped. It's just some people who've had more privileged lives are not aware of the power of the people. And Kulumani keeps reminding me, you are here to serve the people, not yourselves. So I think my time is probably up. I'd love to talk to anybody if you'd like to, and I can maybe email you the presentation I made if you want to share it. I thought it was better to just talk. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. I was going to show you something, but maybe I should still show you. So you get in surprising gifts when you do this work. And this is a gift I was given, and when Joji was talking about the voiceless people, we've always felt like every person has a voice, but so often they've been so oppressed that they can't exercise their voice. And we started organizing community building workshops. And because we were using a model from the Foundation for Community Encouragement, we decided it would be ethical to tell them that we're using their model. And so they said, oh, wonderful, we're going to send one of our facilitators out from the US to train you. And this person, Rusty, his name is Rusty Myers, he was doing a lot of work in prison with, huge numbers of young Black Americans are incarcerated. And his passion was to work with those young people. And I'm going to tell you a story that you might be interested in. He said one day he was working with the young people, training them, and this vision appeared in the room, and the whole room lit up. And then he said, but I recognize the face, because that face had been appearing to me from childhood, when I was even in the cot. It would appear to me. So what is actually happening? So Rusty then he discovered that he had never been told that his grandmother was a Native American. She was Cherokee, and so he went to go and get familiar with the land. The Cherokee people live around, don't remember that huge city, Atlanta, I think it is, Atlanta. And so that Rusty was communicating with the land that had grown his own mother and his grandmother. And somebody turned up to see him. And the person said, I have brought you a gift. When the Second World War was going on, there was a call-up for more new recruits to go to Germany, and the Cherokee Nation decided to go as a Cherokee Nation. So all the patrol battalion was made up of Cherokee Native Americans, and he said that just on the day of the call-up, there was only one white American, European American, as they sometimes call it. And so he said, I think there's a mistake here. I'm happy to stay behind. And they said, no, there's no mistake. You're meant to come with us. And they were shipped off to Germany. All the Cherokee people died in that conflict, but that man survived. And when he came back, he felt that he had a duty to be the voice for all those people who have been killed in the battalion they belong to. And he made it his purpose to be the voice to speak about all the people who had died. So when he came to see Rusty, who was camping outside Atlanta, he gave him this gift, which was a talking wand. Native Americans have these kinds of practices, and the talking wand was given to Rusty. And the talking wand is very interesting, symbolically and spiritually, because then if you hold the talking wand, you will know what you are meant to say to people, and especially when you are having to show up for people who often have had their voices silenced. So he gave Rusty the talking wand, and then Rusty gave it to me when he came to South Africa, and I have it here, and I thought you might like to see it, because I do believe that in this practice where, and like the Native Americans do, they believe in spiritually gifting people with symbolic things. And this is a very symbolic talking wand, and it helps you to know what message you are meant to bring. And I think I would rather put it on the table, and if you want to look in the TV, you can see, rather than passing it around, it's not terribly strong. It survived the whole Second World War and then ended up in Rusty's care. Okay, so leave it for when you have a break.
Thank you so much, Marge. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Alright, so a little change to the program just to allow our young talent to set up. We are going to have our tea break right now. As we're having our tea break, the secondary school Kutlotaro will be setting up so that they can render us their musical item. So yes, our refreshments are at the back. You can grab some tea, some coffee, and a little bite while we set up for the music item. Thank you.
But how are you? You have been so busy. No, finish your jobs, because I want you relaxed. Yes, I want you relaxed, you know. Yeah. I want you fresh.
If you have managed to grab a refreshment, may I ask you to kindly take your seat so that we can continue with the program. And for those who are still taking some refreshments in the back, I am asking that we do that. Yeah, we do that swiftly and maintaining our noise levels there at the back. I will just wait for everyone to settle down so that we can continue with our program for the day.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, wonderful. Now just put up my volume.
All right.
That's great.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. So we are continuing with our program. We are on point number 7. Hello? All right. Well, on point number 7 of our program, where we will be having the presentation on the life with and of Joji Khumalo. Our facilitator for this segment is Ms. Roxanne Mrwebi, who will be reading out the biography of our next speaker, Mr. Prakesh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome back. I do again want to say a special thanks to our band. That was fantastic. Thank you for giving us that moment. I think if any of you know who Prakesh is, you know that he has a bio note worthy of millions. So we are going to try and cut it short to ensure that we do have the time for him to share and present with us. So I will introduce him as a human rights lawyer from South Africa who had to leave the country when his life was threatened by the state. As a human rights lawyer, Mr. Prakesh exposed the unjust systems of apartheid in South Africa, where he defended many political prisoners while fearlessly fighting for justice, exposing the perversions of the rule of law. He was arrested at court and detained in solitary confinement for a month without charge. His life was threatened by the state. Canada later facilitated his safe passage in 1989. We do acknowledge that he has many, many accolades, but for the purposes of trying to keep us a little short, I will highlight that as lead counsellor, Prakesh won the biggest systematic racial discrimination case at the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal in 1997 against the Government of Canada. So he's well known within this space, and more importantly, and amongst the many, many awards he has received. He received from the Law Society in May of 2024 the Human Rights Award, recognizing the obstacles he has faced, which have led to an inspiring career that reflects the highest ideals of the legal profession and merits honoring by the Law Society. In announcing the award, it's important to note that Ms. Jacqueline, the treasurer of the LSO, said the Human Rights Award is granted for devotion to the adjustment of human rights and the rule of law over a long term for a single outstanding act of service. His life and lived experience are harrowing, and background as a human rights activist and lawyer make him a most deserving candidate for this award. Prakesh presently, because this work has not stopped, he continues to strive for everyone, is presently working on AI legal technology that will make access to justice available for millions who cannot afford legal fees, especially in South Africa and Africa with the context that we have. I will now hand over for him to do his speech to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. I hope you can hear me clearly. Just give me thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Also, I want to thank Mandosi. I knew her as Betty, the Khumalo family, Marjorie, and for this kind invitation. Really honored to be invited to share about our dear Duma. So I just say a few words about him. Duma, in my humble opinion, is not just a survivor. He was an activist, he was a witness, and the soul of silence. Duma is one of the most powerful people I got to know. Not only because he survived death row, but because he transformed survival into lifelong activism. He became something much greater, a witness for the dead, a keeper of memory, and a man who turned trauma into public truth. So, who was Duma as I got to know him? Who was he, the man? As you know, Duma was one of the 6 young black South Africans from Sharpeville who were sentenced to death under the apartheid doctrine of quote-unquote common purpose. He was not sentenced to death for personally killing anyone. He was condemned because the apartheid legal system decided that mere alleged participation in a crowd was enough to justify execution. To be clear, the evidence was that Duma was not even present when the protesting crowd had regathered after being dispersed by the police within about 15 minutes of having been dispersed. And Duma had helped a man that was injured by police rubber bullets. So when Mr. Dlamini was unfortunately killed, who implicated him confessed that he was tortured and forced by the police to name Duma as well as Don Okezi. In any event, I won't go into the details of the trial. The trial judge found that not one of the 6 had conspiracy or so-called common purpose evidence that showed there was a conspiracy between the 6 and the actual killers. Deliberately, in my view, including the 5 appellate division judges who were, in my respectful view, intellectually dishonest. And to my understanding, quote-unquote, the common purpose doctrine applied in the crowd situation for the very first time in the Sharpeville 6 case has not yet been corrected in the new South Africa. So let's get back to Duma. Duma, like the others, spent years on death row waiting to be hanged. That experience never left him. It shaped the rest of his life. Duma was sharp, humorous, and alive, even under impossible pressure. He hated the prison, and there was a funny incident. He hated it so much that once he even tried to break his leg so he could get out of prison and into the hospital. So Duma's core nature. Duma was intense, emotionally intelligent, politically became aware, and deeply human. He once told me he felt guilty because he was not an activist like others fighting for their freedom in South Africa. He had great humor, but it was survival humor. He laughed because the alternative was despair. He was brave, but not in a loud or performative way. He understood fear intimately. And because of that, he developed unusual empathy. He became the kind of man who could sit with pain, his own and other people's pain. That later made him a powerful public speaker and activist. Some of his key traits are that he was emotionally perceptive, very sharp wit, was resilient under pressure, became politically conscious, deeply compassionate, cared deeply about his fellow prisoners in death row, carried trauma visibly, and capable of turning pain into purpose. He was not untouched by prison. He was marked by it. He survived, but survival at a huge cost. My relationship with Duma goes back over the years when I first defended him and the other 5 appearing in court for the first time after they had spent months in detention. My relationship with Duma was built through extreme shared experience. Death row creates a bond that ordinary life cannot, in my respectful view. I was simply his lawyer first, but not simply his lawyer later. I was one of the few people standing between him and the other 5 and the gallows. That creates something permanent. I think Duma would have seen in me hope, protection, and yes, accountability. Because every prison mattered. Every time I visited, it mattered. I tried to visit at least once a week in death row to let them know that they were not forgotten. Every adjournment in the trial mattered. Every legal argument mattered. When someone is awaiting to be executed, time itself becomes emotional. In a sense, I was carrying their time. This creates enormous trust and responsibility. Not many know this. After we had lost the appeal court in Bloemfontein, which I believe we were robbed of the decision to overturn the guilty verdict and the sentence of death, because as you know, none of them were found to have caused the death of Mr. Dlamini, and yet they were sentenced to death. My senior partner did not want me to continue fighting for the Sharpeville 6. I disagreed vehemently, so much so that I and 4 of my other five of us together immediately quit the law firm. I went to death row and told them that I was no longer their lawyer and I was not going to continue practicing law. There was no fair fight in the apartheid courts. I had just had enough. The 6, especially Duma, challenged me. How could I abandon them now? When others had given up, I had given them hope. They only knew me. They implored me to continue as their lawyer. I finally relented and agreed that I will only continue their case and will not take on any other new case. They immediately fired the law firm and immediately hired me on the spot to continue acting for them. It is a big responsibility when 6 young people place not only their trust, but their lives in your hands. So what made Duma different? Unlike many others, Duma became one of the strongest public voices after release. He did not disappear into private life. He chose memory. He chose testimony. He chose activism. Even when apartheid failed to kill the body, it left survivors carrying history. Duma became one of those carriers. So after prison, after we fought to release them, I was already in Canada. The South African apartheid state was still arguing that, if you remember, when Mr. Nelson Mandela was released from prison, he wanted all political prisoners to be released. And the apartheid state then turned around and said, no, the Sharpeville 6 are not political prisoners, they are ordinary criminals. And while I was in Canada, I was still fighting for their release. I wrote a memorandum to Mr. Nelson Mandela, motivating, because I knew the case best, why the 6 were actual political prisoners. And I won't go into that. All this to say that we succeeded in putting a lie to what the apartheid government was saying about the Sharpeville 6. So after prison, as most of you know, or not all of you know, he started working with the Kulumani support group. I'm a figure in the Kulumani support group, one of South Africa's most important survivor-led justice organizations. The group gave voice to victims of torture, families of the disappeared, survivors of political violence, and those whose suffering was never properly acknowledged. Duma became a moral authority within that work. He spoke not as an academic, not as a politician, but as someone who had stood at the edge of death. It was merely about 15 hours before we succeeded in court to get a last-minute stay of execution. All 6 had already prepared, to one extent or another, as one can in the circumstance, to meet their maker the next morning. That gave Duma enormous credibility. He understood truth without justice is incomplete. Memory without acknowledgement is another form of violence. He fought to ensure victims were not forgotten after democracy arrived. Duma's stage work and his theatre work is great testimony. Duma also used theatre as activism. He performed and created stage work based on death row, trauma, and survival, most notably work associated with the story I am about to tell, one of South Africa's most important testimonial theatre projects centered on apartheid survivors. This was not acting for entertainment. It was witness. He stood on stage and told the truth of what death row does to a human being. Theatre became memory, healing, and political resistance. That is extraordinary. He turned courtroom into the stage, and the audience became witnesses. His story did not end reprieve. Duma was not only witty, he was charismatic, yet, but indeed was trauma and an extraordinary moral seriousness. He was a man who laughed sometimes because he had seen death too closely. It was survival. If I had to conclude, and perhaps just defining him in one sentence, which is difficult to do, I would say he survived death row and spent the rest of his life making sure the world could not look away. That was Duma. That is Duma. So, justice. He was a client initially who became a friend. He used to write to me from prison, from South Africa, while I was in Canada. He is gone too soon. It's a living memory. He is the proof that survival is not the end of the story. Sometimes it is where the real work begins. Rest in power, Duma. You are forever missed. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you, Mandati and Betty, as I know her, to Bessie, to Marjorie, and everybody else who was involved in inviting me to this very important memorial lecture for our dear departed Duma. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dumelang Abshini, hello. 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 Thank you so much for joining me. Our uncle has left us. He didn't introduce me. If he's our uncle, these are my cousins. And it's not nice being the last born. But it's okay. I'm going to go through the bios of some of the speakers that we didn't get to speak about their bios. and then we're going to host Q&A. Pastor, do we want? Okay. Can the panelists please come sit in the front for us for the Q&A session? Please. So panelists, I'm looking for Bobby Rodwell, advocate Mosoto, Father Patrick Lunan, Dr. Margie Dobson. As the panelists take their places, I think it's a good opportunity to introduce Bobby Rodwell via her bio. Bobby Rodwell works as a producer and a writer in theatre, documentary film, and radio. Bobby is a founder and director of the company Mehelo Maya, Eye to the Sun, focused on the human rights and the use of theatre for social change. After hearing stories of the survivors of human rights violations during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Bobby decided to create a play where people gave their personal testimonies on the stage. As they did at the TRC, the play was called The Story I Am About to Tell. Joji Khumalo was a member of the cast. The play opened in 1997 and ran for 5 years. The experience was very important to everyone in the cast, and they remained friends long after the play closed in 2002. For Bobby, it led to using personal testimonies in the theatre for social change in dealing with issues such as human rights, war, migration, colonization, and gender-based violence. Bobby studied theatre, social anthropology, and African history. She remains a proud distributor of the piece. Advocate Mosotho Patlebe. I said I'm a last born Muslim. Okay. He was born on the 16th September 1968 in Sharpeville. He later went to Mamelodi at the age of 2 and came back to Sharpeville at the age of 7. He attended higher primary in Everton and high school in Tebothemba under Mrs. Slides and completed in 1986. He obtained a secondary teacher's diploma in 1990 and a BA degree in 1996. He further obtained a postgraduate diploma in 1999 and an LLB degree in 2006. He obtained an MBA in 2011. Petlade hold several certificates, including one from Harvard in Boston. He has worked as a teacher, deputy school headmaster, director and acting dean of student affairs at Vaal University of Technology in 1998. He thereafter became a full-time member of Mfuleni between 2000 and 2006, responsible for finance and administration. His other board membership includes the Council of the Vaal University of Technology and the board of the National Student Funding Aid Scheme. He joined the Engineering Council of South Africa in March 2006, promoted the position of director for a few months. He was admitted as an advocate in 2007. In 2009, he joined the Sidibeng municipality as Executive Director, Corporate Services. He was a member of Deputy Chairperson and ultimately Chairperson of the Board of Rand Water from 2002 to 2014. He joined Makalis Water in 2004 as a Chairperson of the board until 2019. It is my pleasure to speak about the last bio, Father Noonan. Father Patrick Noonan. I hope I'm saying that right. Okay. Patrick Noonan has worked in Europe, the Middle East, and the townships of South Africa since 1970, and was still there in the Vaal Triangle, South Africa of Johannesburg, when parishes exploded in anti-apartheid rage in the latter half of 1984. Irish-born, Noonan has made contributions to the reform of law enforcement agencies in South Africa, the National Moral Registration Movement, and the Gauteng, Johannesburg Province Council of Churches in the area of post-apartheid reconciliation. Patrick Noonan is a member of the International Franciscan Order since 1960 and has served that order in many parishes, especially in the area of healing, reconciliation, justice, peace, and care creation. Noonan is the best-selling author of the recently reissued, revised, and expanded book, They're Burning the Churches. He continues to write for magazines, religious periodicals, and newspapers such as The Tablet, the Southern Cross, the Irish Catholic, the Irish Times Literary Supplement has also featured Noonan's books. Now, those are all our speakers. I am opening the floor for a Q&A. Hands.
Greetings to you all, and allow me to stand on the ground that has been established already. My question is directed towards the Duma family and Dr. Johnson. Firstly, Dr. Johnson, allow me to commend your strength, because if I were in your shoes, I think death row horrors would still persist. So my question to you is, having been on the other side of apartheid, and now working with a group that supports victims of the human rights violations, how do you personally reconcile your past involvement in the system that led the arrest, trial, and near execution of the Sharpeville 6? And what have you done, if anything, to seek accountability and make amends to their families? And to the Duma family, my question to you is, as much as we have to sitting, do you think that we're telling the story right? And how would you, or is there any way we should improve in telling the story? And how can we continue to tell the story? Because I didn't know about the Sharpeville 6 until today. So how can we let more people know about it? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Professor Sadi Sayama, and Duma is family to us. And I would like to say thank you very much to all of you and all people being here who walked the journey with Duma. As a family, you are assisting us to curate this beautiful life, even though it was scarred. The scars got to heal, and when the other scars healed, and more scars emerged. My question is, from your experiences with him, and how you were willing to put time aside and resources to fight for him, and also in terms of his many dynamics, his dynamism as a person, as it has been noted, that he was a charmer, he was very humorous, he felt deeply for others, he never, it was almost like he was compartmentalized. You know, there's this compartmentalization that as a family, if we had to tell you about him, it's same story of this person was very humorous, very caring, and very committed, and most importantly, a very humble type of person. But I'd like us to take a step further, that in this space where, as a society, we are facing crisis of morality and many other sorts of things, that how do we pull from this beautiful life, Duma, away a learning? What is the learning from the way that he led? Something that we can use to say, this is Duma Khumalo, and this is how he led. And he led very quietly and very loud. But when you look deeper into who he was and how he did things, it was this strong leadership, but most importantly, he was this very, very moral person, not compromising his morals. I present the question to all of you. Thank you.
One more question.
She wants to repeat it.
Oh, she can.
Dumelang. So, my question is directed to everyone in the panel. Firstly, it's 3 questions, so anyone can choose what to answer and what not to answer. Drawing from the fact that the alleged murder happened sometime around 1984, would you classify that act as unjust or inhumane, bearing in mind the fact that the alleged murder was a form of resistance towards the unjust and inhumane circumstances which our fellow Africans were living under? Secondly, also from the TRC report which I read yesterday, allegedly there were 8 victims who were arrested for those alleged crimes. And 2 victims, namely Christian Mukobung and Gideon Mukonu, were released earlier. So my question is why they were released? And lastly, the TRC granted amnesty for the alleged 6 victims, but no form of compensation was issued to these victims. However, the TRC made statements that compensation shall be issued to those who were victimized towards those unjust systems. Would you classify the TRC as a form of external system that did not just fail but also protected the perpetrators? Thank you.
Dumelang. Patrick Tukwayo, Department of Education. I'm a little bit worried about the knowledge of the individual that we are gathered here for. From the education side, if you look at the number of people who are here, we only have 4 schools. 2 schools are from Sharpeville and 2 schools are from Sharpeville. And Itate Duma was from Sharpeville. And I can bet my last dollar that majority of the learners who are sitting here are hearing this for the first time. So I am challenging the Demsutu, because you are a local, to say we are here as the Department of Education. What can you do or what have you done to ensure that our children in Sidibeng in particular, not just Sharpeville, do not forget this history. And not only Tate Duma and others. That's my first challenge to Tate Musutu. Maybe he will respond. And to the panelists, Department of Basic Education, as we speak, is reviewing the history syllabus. And I know for a fact that this section of history is not there. So I am also requesting that is there a possibility that you can also make a contribution in the reviewal of this syllabus year history, because the subject history is dying in our schools. We have very few schools that are doing history as a subject. And even now, the syllabus that they are doing, it has nothing to do with socio-economic issues that our children are facing as we speak. Therefore, I am imploring the organizers and the family and the panelists that use us as the officials of the department to infiltrate and to assist our learners to know this history so that they know where they are going. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to close this round of questioning. I'll open the floor again for questioning, just so that the panelists have time to answer the questions they ask.
I've been very intrigued by the questions, but I'm not sure what I need to answer, if I'm honest. But I was just triggering lots of memories of Duma. And to show you the kind of person he was, it was, when you work with a social movement, Khulumani is a social movement, people can start all sorts of gossip stories. And so one day I'm called to the office of Khulumani, and I open the door, and I'm captured, you see, captured by Khulumani members, because somebody has been sowing gossip. This happens so much in these kinds of movements. And I don't know that anyone here was actually part of that crowd. And I suddenly thought, you know what I've seen people do in this situation where now you are captured. And, and I thought, I need to actually physically greet each person in this room. And there were about 30 people who turned up. They'd all been mobilized from all over the country. And that, I had noted that that's what Desmond Tutu had done. And so there was only one woman who refused to shake my hand. Everybody else shook my hand. If you make physical contact, it's incredibly important. And then she sort of took her hand very dramatically and put it on the chair and sat on her hand, which was, but it's much better that things are out there than things are secret and you're boiling up resentment in your heart, So then, in the middle of all the drama, what the rumours had been that money, they thought money that was being misused for projects. I've been the fundraiser for Khulumani for more than 20 years, and we are very, very careful with our money. So, this is a common lie that you can use to mobilize people, okay? So then I said, well, I think first of all we must get a list on the flip chart, all the things you want to know, because we'll bring you all the information you want. So we made this list. We were going through the list step by step, and then the door opens and Duma comes in at the right moment. And Duma looks at all the members because he knew everybody, and he says, "What are you guys doing here? I am ashamed of all of you." That was what Duma did. And you know that people got up and they left, and they never worried us again. So he had this kind of moral authority to actually say, "I don't like what you're doing. This is not okay." Okay, that was one big memory I have of Duma. The fact that he had enough authority to be listened to was very, very wonderful. And I think, I don't know, if you ask me, the questions were so long, I can't even remember where to go with them. But let me hand on past this
I don't know why do you put me on the spot. However, I will answer your question. Program director was the other one. Thank you for the opportunity. Mandosi family, Joji Mrwebi, but pleasure to meet you. Untshusitse wena o kena mane ke dutse le John Nkomo ke hayi Duma ku John o ga ke wa kena ara ya siena mane ke the structure is the same. Maybe let me end with your question if you allow me. There's nothing in my mind, there's nothing traumatic like knowing that you are going to die in the next few days, but you are not certain which day. That is traumatic. Even when you are asleep at night, you think that's the time. To have stayed with that since 1984 up until 88, when the UN decided no, we are making a resolution that there should be commutal and a stay of execution. That's a long period. I don't think if I were to be told that I would die in the next month, I will die the following day. And the cause of death will be because of the trauma of knowing that I'm going to die. Right? They survived. He survived. He made jokes about it. He encouraged others to be strong. He lamented the death of young people who died before him. I didn't know Duma much. I only met him, if I remember. We went to see Tokyo Australia when Tokyo was the premier of Gauteng and the chairperson of Gauteng, and I was the regional secretary of the area. So all of them, the loudmouth, Teresa, Jaja, all of them, we went and met Tokyo to think what is it that can be done. That is my memory of him, except that afterwards, Sharpeville, there wouldn't be much that I would personally dedicate to him. But I want to make a challenge. The department, I want to make a challenge. I think if we can work hard, let's put pressure on the university to grant him a posthumous doctorate. I think we can do it. I think if we start that campaign by quickly putting a team together, I think we can honor him more. There was a young man maybe before I go there. If we do that, we'll not only honor him, I think we'll honor the Khumalo family. Mandos, I think we'll definitely honor the Khumalo family. I think we'll honor the people of the Val, right? The university is situated in our region. He comes from Sharpeville, he comes from the Val. Who is best placed to honor him? It's us. It's us and nobody else. It's said that the UN, other human rights organizations across the world, across the globe, speak of him less than we do. What you guys did today, please, please let it be the start. I understand you want to do it annually. I've got a couple of business people and big pockets around here. We'll talk to them to assist in sponsoring the event annually, right? I'm sure. You've raised a lot of money in your life. I'm not saying you've got the money. I'm not saying you've got it. I'm simply saying you've got the talent to raise the money, right? And I'm sure if we put people like you in the team, it will definitely be successful. Now, the question you asked, a lot of people don't know that the people arrested were 8 of them, right? The 2 were given a lesser sentence and the 6 remained. Duma, if I remember them, Duma, Teresa, Reed, Diniso, nan iblanze kero jono jaja asaphila barunga di chance jaja o teng o sodula magweng ga o sa tseba gore right. So I think we should find a way. I look around, I see some of the family members of the Sharpeville 6 not being here, right? It was not about them. You've started, but I'm suggesting that in the future we also invite them, please. I think they would want Mandosi to share a moment like this with us. Now, why did the apartheid judges do it that way? 1984 shook the country. 1984 shook the country. And about Sharpeville, we undermine ourselves. 1960 shook the country. 1984 shook the country. So the many resolutions of the United Nations, other bodies that push for freedom, was because of what happened in Sharpeville. Mara how ya usheba Sharpeville, how ya usheba Valley, Muruti. It's an embarrassment. And those of us who have worked for government, it must be more embarrassing. It's more embarrassing on what our organization is doing at this stage, and we shall hope that those of you who pray every day, please pray for us. Please make us to work hard for the people. Please make us to ensure that there is service delivery. I'm no more in government for years now, but my daughter does not like what she sees outside. And to be honest, so do I. So do I. And I think most of the people of this area do not like it at all. In '84, when there was the rain boycott, when Duma decided to say, I'm joining the boycott, Sharpeville was a better area, right? Sharpeville was a better area than it is now, right? The value was better than it is now, and in that should come as an embarrassment to a whole lot of us, right? So there's something that our government did in 1994. They compromised. They compromised for the good. They compromised saying black and white we must come together. Some of the sins of apartheid must be buried. People will debate whether it was good or it was wrong. I'm one of the people, when I'm behind closed doors, I say it was a good thing, right? There would have been bloodshed if we were to be told that so-and-so and so-and-so killed so-and-so, right? It would have led to bloodshed. But whether we should keep quiet about it now, I'm not sure at all. And if Kolomani, you push a project of reparation, I've got a couple of lawyers like myself here. I'm sure we'll join your campaign. I don't have much to say from the questions that have been posed. But I think today's that you did very well, the department. I think I'm one of the people, given the opportunity, will write a letter to Chancellor and Vice Chancellor and applaud what has taken place today. We started slow, and can I tell you something? All projects start very slow, right? So you are on the track. Thank you very much.
Can I speak? I have to stand and hold this thing at the same time. I hate it. I hate holding these things in front of my mouth. I just like the man down there who asked the question. I'd like to share some secrets with you. Would you like to know some secrets? Yes. But I'm not supposed to say it in public. So don't tell anyone outside I told you. Don't be. This is a secret now, only for you. Just a few things in reference to the man there who asked the kids, the guys, the young people today don't know much what's happening. They don't know recent history. By the way, I come from a country which was colonized for 800 years. That is Ireland. It's fairly unknown. So I had to decolonize my mind when I was a baby. Well, no, I'm sorry. We didn't even have the word decolonizing minds. We didn't know what that was. Nobody knew anything about decolonizing minds 20 years ago or 50 years ago. But I'm the product of my ancestors where they were colonized for 800 years. So I sometimes compare South Africa history and Irish history. I want to share some secrets, as I mentioned to you. We talked about, we have to see the Val Triangle history, the big picture. the 1960 Sharpeville massacre, the Delmas treason trial, the Sharpeville Six, the last uprising against apartheid started in the townships of the Val Triangle and became more widespread even than the Soweto riots, because the Val Triangle uprising spread not only around the country, which the Soweto uprising, as far as I know, didn't do. The uprising here went around the country, but it also was shared by parents, grandparents, children, and teenagers. That's very unique and unknown. And it's the first secret I want to share with you about what happened here in the 80s. So we have to see the big picture, the history of the Val Triangle. And for that, you will know probably the organization in the Val Triangle called the Val History Research and Initiative, run by Sizwe Makaba and Shirley Papani. Now they are collecting, as we speak, they are collecting the history of the whole area. And we see the Delmas Treason trial. We see, the story of Duma in the context of all that, the extraordinary history of the Val Triangle. That's point number 2 or point number 3. A media group came to me in Sybil King when I was living in Sybil King there some years ago. A media group came to me to ask what happened in the Val Triangle in the 80s, from 84 to 94, exactly 10 years when we got the first elections, 10 years in the Val Triangle. A rolling type of uprising took 10 years. So they asked me, a media person came to me about 12 years ago. I was living in Zone 14. And they asked me, can you give us information on what happened in 1984 to 1994? And I said, yeah, I wrote a book on it. It should be there in the libraries. And they said, no, it's not. They went off to the library and said, we tried every library in the Val Triangle, and they were told there is no history of the uprising of the Val Triangle. Because I was living in the township and I was taking notes on what was happening every day with the security branch, the South African police, the army, and they at the time were monitoring. Who were they monitoring? Also, the clergy. That's why at that time in the 80s, we established the Val Minister Solidarity Group. The Val Minister Solidarity Group, a coming together of the churches and monitoring the history of what was happening in those days in all the townships in the Val Triangle. And that group, the Val Minister Solidarity Group, was led by whom? Maruti here in front of me. Dr. Wirani. He was, and do you know what we were? The government of P.W. Botha initiated an investigation into the causes of disruption of education in the Val Triangle. And they had many conclusions. One of the conclusions was that the churches, here's a government established, and this is secret number 6. The government, the person who was invited to establish why is the Val Triangle, why is there discontent, especially in the area of education. And one of the conclusions was, there were many, about the churches was, they were saying the churches in this country, and P.W. Botha read this, he said the churches in the Val Triangle are teaching revolutionary theology, liberation theology, black consciousness theology. That's what we were accused of. Now that's That's secret number 7.
More or less.
Number 7 or number 8. And we thought, as church, we were teaching biblical theology. But you see, there are different interpretations, even in Christianity, of what happens with human beings. There are different interpretations. So that's another thing. So we should see the Val history, the big picture, and then Sharpeville. Now, here's another secret, number 10. This is secret number 10. We had Liberation Day or Freedom Day there recently, and we were continually told in the media, in the radio, television, we are commemorating the 69 people who died in 1960 of the Sharpeville massacre. But we know for about 5 years that that's untrue. It was up to 90 people who were shot, because the investigation lasting 5 years concluded 2 years ago in a book. Here's the name of the book, Voices of Sharpeville by Clark and Wagner. They interviewed hundreds of people in Sharpeville in the last 5 years. They found that up to 90 people were shot in 1960. And here's one for you, including 3 unborn babies. Now that is accurate reporting. And this is completely unknown. That's why I call it a secret. We in the Val Triangle have to come to grips with our history, because our history is the history of South Africa. Have I anything else to say? The role of the churches, I think, one time I remember there are veterans of what happened in those days, still today traumatized. They shouldn't forget. The healing of memories weekends are still held in the Val Triangle for people who are still suffering psychologically and mentally from what happened in the 80s. And there are groups who are doing healing of memories in a place called La Verna, out there near the Val River. What else do we have here? We shouldn't forget the Buipadum massacre. That's part of our history, you see. And of course, I've written down Kurumani. That's part of it. But all these things are part of the big picture. And I hope that responds to what the man was saying now, and to ask you the question, what's the big picture? We in the Val Triangle are great, and we better be proud of ourselves, because as Advocate Biso said, in the Val Triangle, it was the last uprising against apartheid, after which democracy was established.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it all right if I sit down, or should I stand?
It's okay, sit down.
Can I sit? I can also stand, which is better. Stand. Okay, even though I work in theatre, I'm very nervous about speaking in public. I always get the actors to do that. But I wanted to talk about the story I'm about to tell. I was the producer who created the script, and I just wanted to give a little bit of background to the creation. And I wanted to thank Prakash about what you said about the story I'm about to tell, and its importance in terms of theatre of witness and theatre for social change. And in fact, it did make an impact, not only in terms of the human rights issues, but in theatre itself, actually. And how it started was, at the time I was writing for New Nation, when people who are older will remember the great New Nation newspaper, and when the TRC opened.
there were two things that struck me when I was writing, and I worked with Kulumani. I worked with Rudy a lot in Kulumani. Firstly was that the TRC was so theatrical. It was lights and it was all big stuff. It was filmed by SABC and put on television, and I was a little alarmed by that being something of theatre, really. And the second thing was that it was very obvious, with all the will in the world, that it wasn't going to get very far across the country. I think the very structure of it meant that it was going to be centralized. It went to capital towns. So we wanted to create a theatre piece that could travel to churches, to town halls, and schools, which is what we did. And we approached Kulumani to ask whether any of the Kulumani members would like to take part in the theatre project. Duma was there first. He was there to tell the story of death row, so that everybody knew what it meant, what death row actually meant. He was from the Vaal, and then the other two people were Thandi Shezi and Mam Catherine Mlangeni. She told the story of her son, Begi Mlangeni, the human rights lawyer, who was sent the faulty headphones. And so we started this process with three remarkable actors, Kenneth Nkosi, the late Ramala Machene, and Dan Robertson. And the actors sort of held the non-actors, because it's a very scary process making a play, really. And we sat and we told story after story. And it became obvious that, number one, the people who had told their stories at the TRC, or who were going to tell their stories at the TRC, this was 1997, so the TRC was still on, were going to write their own stories, and secondly, they were going to go on stage and tell their own stories. They were not handing the stories over to actors. And hence started a process of personal testimony in theatre of social change. The stories were cut down with permission, but never changed. Those were the stories that were told, and hence the story I'm about to tell. Somebody spoke a little bit about the intentions of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. To us, we didn't understand what reconciliation meant when conditions had not changed at all. I don't know that you can have reconciliation when material conditions remain the same. At that point, now worse. But so our key theme within the play was reconciliation. And also, just in terms of how the TRC was structured, a statement that we made in the play, a very strong statement that I thought that we made, was, the past is in the present, and no one seems to be responsible for putting it here. And that really was the theme of the production. We then traveled around the country. We always kept to traveling to community halls, to churches, to schools. And I must say that one of the people that traveled with us is Cruelty Mofokeng. He was an expert on the TRC at the time and worked for the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. He traveled everywhere with us so that he could unpack what was going on with the TRC. Clocky and I were just having a discussion, and two performances came to mind. The one was at Payi in Soweto, where we would perform for 1 hour. No lights, no costumes, nothing. No music. We just performed 1 hour, and then we'd have a discussion for 1 hour. And at Payi College, the discussion was about 3 hours. And people were telling their stories. So the play became the TRC, about the TRC. A second performance that really stood out was in Mpopomeni in KZN, where we were performing in a church in KZN. The church was packed and people were standing at the windows around the church, etc. And we then had a discussion for about 2 or 3 hours. And I remember the late Ramala Machene, he had been in theatre for 20 years. We had the discussion, and then because he was a well-known actor, he would always have a gaggle of youth around him, asking him questions. So we probably spent like about 5 hours at the church. As we drove away, Ramala said to me, "Now that is theatre." And that was such a beautiful thing. He'd been on stages everywhere. That for us was the theatre that we were doing. The play eventually did travel quite a lot overseas. The first place was Sweden, actually, Stockholm Stadstheater. Yes, Swedish.
I will continue, Bobby.
Yes.
I will continue to tell you the whole story.
She was in the audience.
I was in the audience. I saw the play.
Wow.
Yes, it was. So I'm going to continue your speech.
Here, now.
I'm following you.
Wow.
So you are in the shock now.
You were in the...
You see the consequence of what you have done.
Wow, I see the consequence.
Yes, you do.
And you made a film about it too, about the whole...
So here's the
what we are talking
confirmation.
about. We are going to
show you.
So you owe us royalties.
Yes. You are. Yeah.
And,
that's the story.
That's amazing. You were in the audience. Raymond Suttner was the ambassador at the time and was in the audience as well. We all went to the ambassador's house for lunch. And I might add that my daughter, standing at the back with a strut, she was 2 weeks old when we went to Sweden. The thing about the play, though, as Clockie and I were speaking, was the family that was developed around the play. Betty, the whole family. Georgie was 5. Georgie shouldn't have been in the play, watching the play, but no one could keep him away, and he knew all the words of the play. He used to prompt Duma, all the words of the play. So that was the play that we did. I want to just come back to the point of what did I learn from Duma? When Duma arrived, he said there was a point at which his cell in death row was close to where they would take people to be hanged. And you would hear the chains. And when the chains came past, when the people came past, he knew there was a chance that the Sharpeville 6 would get a reprieve, that there was a chance because it was such a high-profile case. He would say, if I get out of here, I will tell the story again and again and again, which he did for 5 years, went on stage, told his story again and again and again. And you mentioned Andrew Zondo and Lucky Payi. When he spoke about Sipho Pulu, Lucky Payi, Andrew Zondo, it was with such deep grief. They were younger than him. They were so young. And he wanted to tell their story. He promised them he would tell their story. And as you said, particularly Lucky Payi, he was so close to. Every time he told that story, Duma was so moved. Years later, we made a film on death row with Reed Mukwena, one of the other members of the Sharpeville 6. Do you remember?
I was in that
film.
You were.
Yeah.
I was seeing your face and I was thinking, you were in the document. So I'm meeting everybody at a circle. And then I saw those cells. And the 52 steps. to the gallows. And then I couldn't understand how people like Duma could come out of that. How? How do you live after that? But he did, with a great sense of humor. I also operate on humor, and Duma and I had so many really hilarious jokes between us. Wherever we traveled, we would always be telling jokes, and with quite dark South African humor. It's remarkable. He told the story. So when you ask what I learned from him, I learned the importance of witness, that we must be witness, and we must be witness to history. And I want to say to young people, I know sometimes you may think, oh, older people are saying history, 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 but it's now. It's so important that we know why the past is in the present and who put it there, in order to make change and to move forward. And I don't think that the TRC was particularly effective in making the forward move, in keeping the history and making the forward move. We need to know the history. Okay, I think that's what I was going to say. Again, about history, there's a lot of talk, and very important, around decolonizing the mind, and also the coloniality that we live with every day. But if we don't look at history, and we don't look at history makers and how change came about, we are not going to be able to move forward. And that's my message to the youth. And my message to the Khumalo family is, you've been family to me. And that was the beauty of this play. We all still see each other. It's amazing. It was 27 years ago. We all still see each other. We all celebrate with each other. And I think that's the power of theatre. I think that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Unfortunately, I can't open the floor again for questions. However, you guys will be able to have conversations with our panelists while we when we move into lunch. So you guys will be able to have conversations. Prakesh, Mr. Prakesh, we acknowledge you, we see you. If you want to have conversations with Mr. Prakesh, you can IPing. Just write and speak to him. Just sit down here and speak to him. But for now, I am going to hand over to Roxanne. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, everyone, and we do apologize. I think, obviously, as always, when we get to do events as exciting as these, the time just isn't enough. It's already been stated and noted that these are conversations and sessions that we should be hosting and should be holding, and continue to do so. In the interest of the fact that we do have a film that we would like to screen, and we do think it's important that our students are at least able to see part of this. They do have a time by which they need to leave. I am going to request that our school teachers please assist us with just handing out packed lunches to all of the school pupils whilst we start the screening. I am going to just give you a little briefing of what the film is about. Yeah? Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little short about what the film is. We're going to allow Father Noonan to give us a few minutes speak, and then I will be calling up Hannah and Asa so we can actually start the screening. Again, I do apologize. We're just trying to ensure that we do get the school students to see as much of this as possible. We do have refreshments for the rest of our guests as well, that once all of our students are settled, you can also start going and collecting and getting some refreshments. So the title of the film that we will be screening is The Long Way to Justice, a documentary about reconciliation, redemption, forgiveness, and surviving 3 years on death row as an innocent man. This film was put together for us by Asa and Hannah, as I've said. I will call them up right before we start the screening, but just to give you an idea of what it is about. The film follows Duma closely through voices including his widow Mundo, his spiritual advisor Pastor Patrick Noonan, Desmond Tutu scholar John Allen, Abby Skas, lawyer and author of South Africa's Democratic Constitution, Duma's friends and namesake Sipho Khumalo, director and curator of the Sharpeville and Vaal District Memory Museum. Father Noonan, I believe you have something to share with us about your book before we start the screening, but please, school teachers and to our organizers, please start to hand out the lunches just to our pupils to ensure that by 1 o'clock we can have you process as you need to.
Brothers and sisters, oh no, I'm supposed to say ladies and gentlemen, we're not in church. If we were in church, I'd say dear brothers and sisters. But no, we're not in church. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, young and old. This is secret number 11. I want to share with you.
Number 11.
Yeah, and Bobby, you mentioned something I'm going to mention. Just want to confirm. And this is. I was sitting minding my own business in Small Farms, Everton, in 2012. And I got a phone call at 4 o'clock in the evening. Small Farms. You don't wander around small farms at night time because there's no lights. There was no lights in 2012. I got a phone call saying, Father, I want to come and see you. Oh, I said, yeah, okay, Duma, right, okay, let's come. So he came here 8 o'clock at night time, walking. No lights outside. And I was wondering what Duma wanted. What was on his mind? Why was he coming at night time to have a chat, almost a secret chat? And he asked me 3 questions. And the questions were the following. This is what it came about, secretly. What do you think of forgiveness for those who commit crimes against humanity? That was, you see, Duma was a thinker. He thought about things. That's question number 1. Question number 2 was, how do perpetrators ask forgiveness from God? That's Duma. That's Duma at his best, at his theological best. He's now into spirituality. That's the second question. How do perpetrators ask forgiveness from God? And question number 3 was, why should I forgive anyone? There were the 3 questions. Gosh, I was turned upside down at 9 o'clock that night in Small Farms in 2012. I was young that time. I was able to get emotional. I'm not emotional now. And, you know, it set my mind off thinking, why is Duma interested in reconciliation? You know, between races and all that stuff. And I began to think when he left, wow. And I began to think, you know, as Hannah's mentioned there in the film, reconciliation. Duma, interested in reconciliation. And then I began to go through names and what would you call a book for reconciliation? And I began to ask people around the Vaal Triangle and around South Africa, what can you call a book on reconciliation? Here were some of the answers. Can we reconcile? Can South Africa reconcile? These are the names of a possible book. Reconciliation? Never. Why reconcile? Is reconciliation worthwhile? These are possible names of the book that he inspired me to begin to work on. Or My Unreconciled Life. Imagine calling a book My Unreconciled Life. You know, Well, I mean, hey guys, you know, within our own families, we need to be reconciled at times too. That's for sure. And other names, possible names. My reconciliation, whites are too busy to reconcile. And Reverend Wairani will tell you that because he organised us to go up to Johannesburg to have meetings with whites. They never came. It was only blacks who were interested in reconciliation. I'm talking about 24, 25. Anyway, I discarded the word reconciliation. I said, no, it doesn't work. It's no use. So here's what I called the book. Now, the man who started here this morning, who introduced everybody, he's from the faculty here. I didn't get his name because I was detained outside for a few minutes. But the man who did all the introductions, he said that from his village there were certain dogs there. Didn't he say that?
Yeah.
Dogs that chased people and didn't like him. Now, I'm not sure whether somebody told him something, but the name of the book I did produce on reconciliation was this: Help, my granny's dog is a racist. Help, my granny's dog is a racist. I'm not sure where. The man who introduced us this morning from the department, did somebody tell him? The director. I don't know whether somebody told him. But the book I am now going to present to a member of the family who would please, Patrick or Mendoza come up and just take the book that I wrote on reconciliation. I have it here and I'd like to present it to the family. There's a dog on the cover. Help, my granny's dog is a racist. Now you can draw your own conclusions, what it was like in apartheid, in white areas, when dogs barked at you passing by. But since democracy, I noticed that dogs bark at me too. So, there you go. Welcome. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have, as I said, our refreshments available. Again, I'm going to ask if we can please just ensure that our school teachers also get something to eat first. I am going to call up Hannah Olsen and Asaf Aringer to please come introduce the film to us and to start the screening. Please, as you are grabbing refreshments, everyone, can we try and be as respectful as possible? As I've said, it is important for us that our pupils, all of us included, but our pupils especially who are hearing about some of these things for the first time, to see as much of the screening as possible. So please,
Hej allesammans! This is Swedish. I promise I will not continue. I just said, hey, everybody. Now I think this will be a conversation just in the spirit of Duma, because we have now learned how to tell a story. And now I will tell you an amazing story, because you know how things start, but you will never, ever, ever, ever be able to imagine the end. So Bobby, your play was the starting point for me and my meeting in Duma. And that's why the reason we are here. Okay? So now I'm just going to introduce myself, Hannah Olsson. I'm a therapist and a writer.
And I am Åsa Färnder. I'm a film director. So, yeah.
Here we are, coming so far as from Sweden, the other part of the world, very, 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 very far from here. And how is it possible, do you think, that another country so far away was the most strongest, I always say, freedom fighters against apartheid. We had in history what really was fantastic, because that was a history since the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, fighting together with you. And I think you have heard of our Prime Minister, Olof Palme, and he was assassinated 86. And some weeks before he was killed, he had his last speech. And the speech was anti-apartheid. And you know who was in the audience together with him? It was Oliver Tambo. So we actually have a history together. But that is on the high level of politics. We are not there also. No. We are just ordinary citizens, but nevertheless we are here. So we have our own history. So I will now share my history about meeting Duma, meeting Cloki King, and the reason how we continued our journey. It started actually in September 1998. And it was just by accident, because I wanted to go to South Africa. I saw in the journal, oh, there is a play, perhaps I would go there. So I went to the theater to see Bobby's play. And it was amazing. I was so thrilled. This was a reality far from my calm life in Stockholm. So I decided, here are the people that I need. I want to go to South Africa. So what did I do as a woman? I said, there's a nice guy. There's Cloki King. He's present here now. And I said to him, could you have a dinner with me? I would like to go to South Africa. And Cloki said, oh yes, okay. So he went to my place. I invited for a dinner. And you know, as an elderly woman, you are worried about young men going home in the street in the night. So I said, in Stockholm, yes, oh yes. So you have to take responsibility as a woman. So I said to Cloki, I'll go with you, Cloki. I went to the hotel, and you know what happened? I met Duma. Duma came out from a room. He's very tall, and I'm very small. And then he made his African shaking hands for the first time for me. And shaking hands in an African way takes time. So he looked into my eyes and then he said, oh, could you help me? And I was, of course, overwhelmed. And I said, oh yes, I can do everything for you, Mr. Duma. Please find a person that I can thank for my life. We are leaving to South Africa tomorrow. I want to do that. And you can really understand my problem. My Lord, he wants me to find a person. Fortunately, I didn't have any work that morning. So I put the foreign ministry. I insisted, everybody I spoke to, I said, I have to have a contact with somebody who's here, a man from South Africa who wants to thank for his life. Okay? Because Sweden had to take action. We were following in Sweden the Sharpeville 6 case. It was very regularly reported. And our Prime Minister also went against Malta. So it really was a really natural thing also. So I did what I could, and then I came to South Africa. That was January 99. So that was my first of my 10th travels to South Africa. Okay. So that was my meeting with Duma. It started in January together with Cloki, and the first thing almost that Duma did for me was to take me to a Kulamana meeting. But I think that guy with the dogs was excellent, explaining our prejudice and our lack of knowledge of other cultures, other persons. Because what would I, as a white person in Sweden, know about this human violations in a way that you couldn't ever imagine at that point for myself. But that was the starting point. So I continued coming to South Africa, and every time I met Duma. So he became a personal friend. And also, what happened before I go about my learnings? Should you tell about? Because Duma had a plan. He wanted to have a collaboration in 2006 between Sweden and South Africa. And then you came into the crowd.
Yeah, exactly. You called me and you asked for a theater director in Sweden that worked in the same way as Duma did. And I said immediately, yes, I have a very good friend and colleague. And we started up to raise money and to do something together between these two directors, Duma and Kent. We had a deep conversation, and we made also, we applied for money together with March and Kolo money to come here and really make Duma's dream come through. And we did get some money, and we went here. Unfortunately, it was too late. Duma had already passed away. But we are the people we are. So we really felt that we have to take that stafettpinne. That, you know, when you are running, you give to another person, and then to another. And now we have it. It's in, and you will see it on screen soon.
So we went here again, and now the Duma's life expanded. It meant that we became a part of Duma's family. Mando, Joji, and a lot of people. All the brothers, sisters, cousins, whatsoever, we are a part. And we got new friends. So it means the family, we had cruelty, of course, then we went to sit for Kolomani in March. Yes. Father Payi, you became a friend actually. Yes, you did. Yes, thank you. So, just to summarize, Duma's lessons for me and for us doing this film together, also and me. I would say 3 things. You had 10. Okay, 11 you had. Okay, okay, I'll say 4 then. Okay, 4. Because Duma was exposed to the worst of injustice, being killed spiritually many times by the strength of the nose. Hearing other being killed, it's absolutely a situation you can't, nobody of us in this room can't imagine the real reality of. But what did he then tell us? He told us the following 4 points, Father. When you are met with injustice for yourself and others, fight for justice. Do the contrary. When you are met with hate and contempt, seek to give love to your friends and family and those others that are hurt. Do not accept words without your own interpretation, words of forgiveness and reconciliation. Don't exactly know what you, Father, told about. You can't accept words if they don't mean anything for you. You have to understand the meaning for yourself. And above all, tell your story in your own words, expose the cruelty, the injustice for the world. You are not a victim, you are a freedom fighter, and beautifully written in this program to strengthen the human spirit. Okay, that is the message from Duma and from us also.
Yeah, good. And my language is filmmaking. I've been working with that for my whole of my life in different continents. And as Bobby said, but I said film. I'm working with film as for social changing. And culture is really indeed powerful. So we decided to do this film together. We've been here 2 years ago, and we did a lot of interviews with some people here in the audience. And this film is for you, really. It is actually what the gentleman over there said before, and all of some of the in the panel here too. How do we tell this story? How do we let the younger generation understand the history? So this is our part or contribution to you, to tell your story, but it's also going to be shown, of course, in Sweden. I will try to show it on the television in Sweden. So this is the very first. You are the premiere for this film, and it's a documentary that is really made for everybody. You from the schools and university here to have understanding about your background. So yes, this is also to build bridges between the countries. So, and we will be here after the film, and we are very pleased and honored if you want to ask us something or reflect something with us afterwards. So have a good screening. Thank you for the work. Have a good day.
Are we still all present, still together? It's been quite a long day, so we're going to allow for refreshments again, once more. So this is the order that things are going to happen. We are going to allow for the students to exit cordially, because they have time constraints. So the learners, we appreciate your presence today. Please take what you learned here and share this information with other learners at your school. To our filmmakers, I am going to make a plea. Because our learners have to leave, we are wondering if it's going to be possible to get a copy of the film to hand over to the learners so that they can be able to screen it at their school, because I think it's quite important that they get the opportunity to see this film. Right, so that's the order of our progress. We're going to allow our learners who have visited us in this institution today to leave first, and then while the learners are leaving, the African thing to do with the Ubuntu spirit that we carry with us, I'm going to ask for the elders first to grab some refreshments and then take their seats, and then afterwards everyone else can start grabbing the refreshments, and then once we're all seated, we are going to watch the screening of the film.